Welcome to the Creativity Dialogues podcast. And we are with the creator herself, Chandana Dixit.
For nearly a year, she's been the one asking the questions. Today, she's answering them.
As one of Bollywood's most celebrated playback singers, who has given us songs that have become part of India's musical memory.
But what makes her story extraordinary isn't just the music. It's where her curiosity took her next.
Alongside a remarkable career, she dedicated herself to understanding the one thing that shaped it all.
Creativity. Today, she's India's leading voice on creativity studies, bringing together music, education, psychology, and human potential in a way no one has.
Alongside her work in creativity studies, she spent over 2 decades building Swarangan, where she's shaped more than 200 voices across India and around the world.
In this special one-year anniversary episode of Creativity Dialogues, we explore creativity through the eyes of someone who has lived it, studied it, and continues to redefine it. This is Chandana Dixit.
Hello, friends, and welcome to the podcast of Creative Dialogue. It's been a year now, and we have been going through this journey of Creative Dialogue, the preparation, the process. And we are with the creator herself, Chandana Dixit. So we will, have a dialogue and her realizations, how she has experienced through the podcast. So please take us through this journey.
Thank you so much, Amit, for being here today, for being a friend and for agreeing to do this and, to sort of engage with me in this way. I think what was interesting was how this started for us, that we were both just conversing and so informally, this thing came up that, why somebody should ask you what this journey had been. So thank you so much for taking this on and doing it. I still can't believe that it's almost a year since this whole journey started. It's been a journey of so many highs and lows because I thought I prepared for it, but I realized you can never really prepare. There's so much that happens just along the doing. There's so many things you don't know. So I just knew that I wanted to bring clarity to the topic of creativity because I'd sensed that there's so much of casualness on the topic, that each person interprets creativity according to however they think. But when I started to really study this topic, I realized that it's a fully defined area or domain. But the common person doesn't really have any idea about this. So that's actually what sparked this journey. That, okay, let's do this. But then the complicated thing for me was that I didn't have any sort of rule to follow. That how is this done? Because, on other topics, if I was looking at psychology, philosophy, anthropology, there is a way of doing things, a system. But for creativity, if you look at most of the channels, they're mostly arts related or, I'll show you how to do this thing a little differently, those type of things. But I couldn't find anything which was just dedicated to the topic of creativity.
So, Chandana, I would like to understand what is creativity for you and how did the journey of your creativity start?
Yeah. So, I think creativity is one of the hardest things to define because perhaps there are some aspects of creativity which will not even be fully revealed. It's just the way, I relate creativity with just being, our existing, our existence itself. But there is another dimension when we actually create something. So these are 2 parts of the journey, I feel, for every human. One is that we are born, so we are just being. But our journey of creativity is becoming. So when we take birth, we are just born with some raw ingredients that, okay, I'm this, I know this, I like this is my history. But from that, our journey of becoming something, whatever it is, whatever our heart, our soul is seeking, that journey for me is actually what creativity in the bigger picture
So it's
looks
the
like.
purpose of life that you define.
It's a purpose, no, it's a purpose, and it's the journey that you undertake. Because then some things become special and unique to you that nobody else could do that. And especially nobody else could do it your way, the way you did it.
But the journey is a very broad spectrum. Can you, put the milestone in the journey? Like as a child, you were growing.
Yes.
How
So-
did you hit the nail of creativity on that?
So actually, I wouldn't say that creativity, I feel, doesn't begin from that point. In our childhood is the time where we start to exhibit our traits of who we are. So it begins with what are the things that we really like or that come naturally to us. So for me, those were always just two things, music and art. So these two aspects, I had no doubt from when I was very small that I really enjoyed doing this. And everybody in the family knew because I grew up in Africa. And so my mother would write letters to my aunt in Pune, her sister. And we found one letter after many years, after professionally I started to sing, in which she had written to her sister that, oh, she's always, when she's playing, she's always humming or she's singing in the bathroom and she keeps on drawing and painting pictures. So, she had just said, "Bahut ek artist honar." And this was just one very small line, literally 3 or 4 sentences. But it was very fun to kind of read that after 2 or 3 decades that, oh, so my mother, when I was very little, had identified this.
It was an inception kind of a thing.
Yeah.
She never said it to you.
She didn't even say it to me. I don't remember her ever saying it to me. But because it was what I did all the time. That's how I played. That's how what I really liked. I remember that, whenever we would be taken for shopping, like normal children, whenever you're taken for shopping, it's like, what toys do you want to buy? So my favorite toys would be to make things. Make things as in, those jewelry boxes where you put some beads together, you make jewelry. Or with plasticine or these things, you can make different shapes, pots, flowers. Or a little later, actually just small painting things, small little mini canvases or things to paint, color.
So it was more like in a child development language, the finger motor skill was getting developed.
But for me, I was not bothered about that getting developed. I was like, I'm having so much fun. I can make this necklace, I can make this pot, or I can make these flowers out of clay, plasticine, or whatever. I don't know what it's called today. But it was the joy of making, or then just humming and singing just for fun. So these, I think, were indications about what I would do in the future because they came very naturally to me. That's all that I like to do.
Right.
And from this then, if I had to define that, when did music come into my life? That came in a very strange way. I was not taking any formal classes in my childhood. I mean, I was growing up in Africa, and there was no scope for any of this. And that many decades back. So, I remember that my mother was a great, she loved music. She was a Sangeet Visharad herself. And actually, we were perhaps the only family in Africa who had a harmonium because my mother had taken it. Of course, she was not very seriously into any of this, but the love for this was there. Even my father never trained, but he loved to sing. So in Africa, in my childhood, every weekend, all the Indians used to get together to celebrate, to have a party. And I remember my father would take one of these dabbas, boxes in which food would be stored, an empty one. And he would just try to tap the tabla and sing all these songs with no training. So those are my absolute childhood memories. But Another thing that my mother did is every time we would come from a holiday from India back to Nigeria, she would bring the latest songs. Whichever were the biggest hits at that time. And so we would have new music because there was no radio, there was nothing. And I remember that was something that she would do. So from childhood, I was used to hearing played music. But the time that it really stuck me was one time after a recent trip to India. And mom had picked up the songs of Rocky, which had just released then. And I remember that I distinctly remember that experience that we were having a party at our home. And so, everybody was chipping in, helping, and I was dusting the tables, and my mother was cooking in the kitchen, and she played the songs. And I remember distinctly that I was wiping something, and Lata Mangeshkar's vocals began for Kya Yehi Pyar Hai, and then Kishore Kumar joined in. And I felt my hands stopping and the hair on my hands just standing. It was a moment that after so many decades, I can recall so clearly that I just felt, wow, what is this voice? What is this thing, this music? It's just, it's fantastic. And that feeling of that Kya Yahi Pyar Hai, it's just stayed. And I think that got me hooked onto music. After that, I very consciously started to play the records of different songs myself. And it was just to consume, not actually even with any intention to learn, but just for the sheer joy of that
So
music.
the records were your teacher. The first teacher was recording.
I would say, I wouldn't even know whether it was teaching, but I feel even more than teaching anything, it is how do you plant love for something in a person? Because if they start to love something, they will just start to engage with it in a very different way. So I think the seeds of that love were planted there. And then, different things happened.
That is the first, I think, the ingredient of creativity that gets imbibed into a child.
Is what do you love? And how do you feel a connection for something? It can be for anything. For me, it was with art and music. But once the listening started, then I feel a different kind of connection and development started.
So I'm sure that effect of Kya Yahi Pyar Hai has stayed in you, and our audience would love to hear how it got rooted in your voice. So if you can just
okay, although it's been so long, but let me just try. क्या यही प्यार है, हाँ हाँ यही प्यार है, हो दिल तेरे बिन कहीं लगता नहीं, वक्त गुजरता नहीं, क्या यही प्यार है, हाँ हाँ यही प्यार है.
So that's I think so a playback singer in you is singing, but you wouldn't be that perfect when you were a child. I'm sure that journey from that child to the successful playback singer had a lot of creative spurts or experiences. So can you just share?
So actually, before even reaching my playback career, we moved back to India after my 10th. And that's when my formal learning journey started.
Okay.
Of beginning talim or classical music. So my mother was very keen that I should learn some music. And luckily for us, Saraswati Bai Rane, the famous singer of the Kirana Gharana, lived just down the lane from our house. And it was as if, some things I feel are meant to be. And it was that sort of thing that happened, that going to Saraswati Bai was wonderful because she herself being so accomplished that she was not just a classical singer, but she was one of India's first playback singers. So in the black and white era, there was that song in Rag Bhimpalasi, Beena madhur madhur kachu bol. So that was her song.
Okay.
Way back in the black and white era. So she was one of those few singers who was singing both classical and film music also. So I think that was like a blessing in disguise for somebody like me, because I feel learning classical music is essential. And it's such a benefit for anybody who wants to sing, especially if you have a background from India. To not learn that would be to miss everything. Because in classical music, you learn all about the scales. You learn about voice creation. That is, how does your voice move in Mandra Saptak, Madhya Saptak, Tar? So that is the lower octave, middle octave, higher octave. You learn about the notes. Another very important thing that I discovered in Indian classical music is that we don't sing the notes the way it's sung in Western music. In classical music, we sing between the notes. So, for example, if we have a Komal Re in a rag, for example, Rag Bhairav, then we have our evening rags like Puriya Dhanashri or Puriya or all these family rags. And they use Komal Re too. But the frequency of that is different. So in micro notes, we are able to capture the exact frequency that belongs to that rag. So this was a wonderful revelation. And I feel that there is so much depth and precision in this music that it really helped me change my perceptions of music, and also just learn that this is the way music can be approached. So I learned classical music for 2 years. But what was the most unexpected was winning the first prize in the first competition I participated in. So that actually gave me a feeling that, okay, because I always believe it's not only what you do, but sometimes I feel that you need to also have blessings, good fortune also working for you. Because sometimes maybe if I hadn't won that first prize right away, I mean, after that, it's not that I won every competition, although I did most, but not always the first prize too. I realized that that gives, especially for somebody like me who had come from another country and was trying to learn so many new things, I feel that having this like a blessing really helped me to settle in and to commit to this. That, okay, if I put in the effort, it's actually translating into something.
So it's more like you are born talented for the music world. It was inborn in you to relate to that things, because you are mentioning that the Komal Re and the other swars are between the, so these are observations.
They're observations.
These are very niche observations for anybody who wants to learn any trade.
Yes.
Since we are on the creative path, so is it that creativity will require a lot of observation?
Yes, for sure. Because I think that if we think about it, who actually creates? It's the human who creates. So whatever they create, for that, it's going to be dependent on the degree of perceptions that they have. Are they able to make connections between different things? Because, you've asked an interesting question, and I feel from that, another important question comes. That is skill or mastery the same as creativity? So I would say no. Because if we are talking in regards to music, classical music, I've seen so many artists who do a lot of tayari or riyaz or practice. They practice for hours and they do end up achieving so much of perfection. Say for tans, or for their singing, be it the bandish, the alaps, they get a very high degree of precision, which is great, because that's what the material with which you work. But that we would call mastery, accomplishment, mastery, and skill, a very highly skilled level. But creativity is something else. Creativity is how much can you work out of the box. So for creativity, it's not dependent, because what happens with skill, I've often seen that artists tend to become repetitive. So once they know, okay, these 20 tans of mine are amazing, I can just pull them off. Then in every concert, they just sing the same things. It becomes repetitive. Because to be creative, you have to be willing to fail. You have to dare. You have to say, never mind, maybe something will go wrong, but at least I tried something new. And then when you're having a great day, creativity actually happens, and to a completely different degree, where you have broken your own barriers, your own limits, and you have moved to another level. So creativity requires you not to stay safe, that, I know this, I'm so good at this, now I should keep on repeating this, it's my formula. People who do that, they become very skilled, but they don't necessarily become creative. And since our topic is creativity, I think this distinction should be understood.
So when we understand this distinction, like if we take a case-to-case example, if somebody, like we are 8 billion people on this earth, right? You think everybody is creative?
Yes.
That's great.
And I'll tell you what I mean when I say that everyone is creative. I feel that every human has creative potential. Now, I can't guarantee that every person will be creative. I know that every person can be creative. And if you ask me why, how can I say that with such assurance that every person can be creative? I can say that because if we just look at what nature has given us, every human being has been given more or less, even though we might say that some people have handicaps. I'll come to that in a minute. But if we think every human has eyes, has a nose, has hands, legs, which can do something, which are meant to do something. These are things we can look at. Then we have the things like our brain, all our cognitive abilities. We have that is meant to do something. Now, if a person chooses not to do anything, that is on them. But everything, nature has given us everything. And nature has given actually everybody equal. What I mean by equal is that everybody has a different gift. Nobody will do the same things. Like, it's not only in the arts that those people will be creative. That's wrong, because everybody who sings or paints is not necessarily creative at all. They might be just copying others, doing the same things. So creativity is in every field, whether it could be agriculture, it could be science, it could be economics, it could be manufacturing,
homemaking, and general living also.
Living creative is not about a profession. Creativity is an approach to life, that how do you live like? So coming back to the thing that can everyone create? We have our entire body, which is just meant to create, to make. But another unique ability that we have as humans, and not as other animals on the planet, is that we have an ability, we have language. So language is so important. That's why we are able to even imagine the ancient people before language. They could not create like we are creating today, because even their thoughts, there was, when we keep something in our mind, we say, okay, I have to do this, or I will first do this, then I will do that. So language is helping us keeping things in our mind. But another quality, other animals don't think that, okay, at 6 o'clock, I will do this. Or after 5 days, I'm making a plan now. I want to record a podcast. So today I will plan, I will schedule. After 5 days will be the shoot. Then it will get edited. Then it will get released. No other animal can do this. So we have this temporal quality of understanding time. We know that today is whatever, today is Friday. Then next week, animals don't understand this. Even we as humans, before language came, we may not have had all these systems in place. So language is another unique creation of the human.
Very important topic, because I came across a word which is called metacognition.
Yes.
Yes, metacognition is a science where you are thinking about your thought.
Yes.
So that is what humans can do.
Yes.
But the subhumans cannot do, because they cannot say
Think
to
about
themselves,
what-
yeah,
yes.
think about their own self, or like if they are happy, they cannot say that they are happy now.
Yes,
That's
completely.
yes.
Metacognition is such a unique human quality that it actually enables us. And when it combines with language, we are able to completely, think, assess. This gives us great power. Then I said another ability is our ability to think in terms of time, temporal. We are able to think about our history, that, oh, what did my grandfather do? What did my mother do? Or what did our ancestors do? There's so much to learn. Other animals don't think, a dog, a cat, a horse, a lion doesn't think, what did my grandmother do? How did she evolve? So these are uniquely human abilities. Just the way our neuroscience, our biology, our ideas and concepts, be it on spirituality, religion, which ground us, or our culture, even more than that, I would say our culture, which is unique to different lands. It has a unique flavor of its own. And through these parameters, every human has the capacity to create. Now, why they don't create is another problem in itself. We can
So
get
we'll
to
go
that.
through that.
We'll get to that.
We'll come to that.
Yeah, but as a potential, every human can create.
So since we are on the language, neuroscience and culture part, I would I'm very intrigued to ask you if you relate the language part through the musical notes.
Yes. So actually, if we think about how creativity actually developed, creativity began in a serious way when language was developed. That was the first thing where we said cognition. That was the cognitive revolution. One of the earliest revolutions. Because without language, human beings couldn't connect with each other. And so things couldn't really be made and developed. I mean, imagine, I'd sometimes just wonder, how would the ancient humans be talking with each other? They must be using sign language. They must have been using primal sounds like,
Stone cuttings.
yeah, or that, but so just all of this, the human really, this is something we will never know for sure because it's happened too long back. It's undocumented. We can just try to use our powers of reasoning to see how do these dots connect. So when we look at creativity, it started real serious creativity from the era we call the cognitive era, where language actually came. So reading and writing became a thing that you could read, write, you could convey. Of course, that reading and writing must have come in later. It must have begun in such a small, simple way of just few words. The language must have come in actually much later through a lot of effort. I can only imagine. And like you asked, the connection with music, I sometimes feel so intrigued and interested that how did the earlier humans think about music? I feel our history tells us perhaps from the sound of birds, of how they were using notes and how they were going with one note to the other. So so you're dragging a note. So maybe these things came from there. Of course, this is a little bit of what we are interpreting, or the way a waterfall or streams, or how rhythm from, tapping, and how these things came together. So they say during, the Vedas and the Vedic period, when they would do chanting, at that time, they used to have just three notes. Ta ra ra, ra ra ra, and they were just playing in a very simple way. These reciting used to happen. So how all of these ideas connected are just so intriguing and exciting for me, that the first note, they must have found one note. It must have taken a long time for all 7 notes to get connected. And initially, I think people weren't even thinking of music, I feel. It was about expressing, and then that expressing probably got converted to rituals, to the Vedas, to recitation. And then as, things started to grow overall, the music also probably kept developing.
So since you are a musician yourself, a singer yourself, and you got your path through music, but there are so common people who have no path in creativity. So how will they find their creativity?
Okay, so I'm so glad you asked this question, because this is where I want to say that creativity is not about music. It's not even about writing the Vedas or chanting the Vedas. Or creativity is a way that humans express themselves, and that happens in every field. So if we think about the ancient times, people were developing everything from scratch. If we look at the lives we live now, what do we not have? We have walls, we have ceilings, we have a fan, air conditioners, lights. If we think about it, what did the ancient man have? He had nothing besides just his body. And he was living in the jungles. He was just trying to fight for food and survival. So our origin is from the hunter-gatherers, where they were just hunting for food, for survival. They were just trying to learn how to live, making weapons to save themselves, shelter, trying to find coverings. So all of this is creativity. It's immense creativity that has any other animal on the planet done what humans have done. We have agriculture, we have law and order. Every system, we have simple things like making combs to brush our hair, makeup, jewelry, what do have humans not created? So with all natural resources. So human beings have incredible creativity. It's not singing, it's just one part. Now with this, I will like to explain how humans were all creative. I really believe that almost all humans must have been creative, the ancient humans. Otherwise, we could not have a society developed the way it is today. It's all the imagination. So, another thing I forgot to mention, that humans have this quality of imagining and visualizing. So imagine somebody must have just visualized that, oh, if there could be an aircraft, why can't I fly like a bird? And that would have gotten them to make an aircraft, to be able to fly. Or why, if I walk, it's tiring me, it's slow. Then let's make a bicycle. Then let's make something like a car. Then let's make trains, flights. So all of this is thanks to humans' imagination, their ability to visualize. So what humans have the capacity is they imagine something, anything, and then they just go and make it. This is the fabulous capacity of all humans. But how the ancient humans, I almost feel with certainty, were all creative is because at that time, the humans were divided into 2 categories. One category we can say were people with knowledge or expertise. And the other people were the literate people, people who could read and write. Now, when I say expertise, the experts, I mean in whatever area. So, for example, if we think of the Dhobi, the person who washes clothes, he would have such knowledge in that area, how to do a great job in that. What is the way to develop this? Then how maybe it's still crumpled? Can we come up with ironing? So it's only a person who has deep knowledge in that particular area that they have the ability to create something from that. So they were creating from this knowledge. It could be in any field, whether there was somebody cooking who was great at cooking or making pots. In fact, at one time, the potters were the highest paid because that was the thing which everyone needed. So these people who had knowledge or expertise in some particular thing, they had a different type of creativity. And then the literate ones, those who could read and write, they would be able to create in a different way. But everybody could create. And I feel that most were creating. And so later, the decline of creativity started. We'll get into that. But does this make sense?
Yeah, it makes sense because I was coming to that same thing. Like in a creative person's life, like a poet or artist, there is a thing called creative pause or a creative block.
Yes.
What about the common man? I mean, where does he get blocked?
So, we love to romanticize this idea that, oh, the writer gets a block or the artist while painting or singing, they feel blocked. But I would like to say, isn't this common for every human? Every human feels blocked. Because at some time, people feel that I just don't know what to do. I'm feeling stuck. I'm feeling like I don't know what should happen next. So that is our human condition. That's what we all experience. And moving beyond that is what all our efforts are directed towards. I mean, just in the journey of life, that's what we all do. So creative, I won't even call them, these are become, fancy words. But actually, these kind of blocks happen all the time. And so I won't even say that they're just creativity blocks. It could just feel, you could feel blocked in so many ways that you just reach the end of a point. It could be, regarding how to raise your kids. It could be about your financial decisions. It could be about education, that I'm not satisfied, I'm not happy. How do I move beyond this? In practically every realm of life, at some point or the other, people have felt these blocks. So our own, how we get out of it could be a creative process in itself. It could be. So blocks I feel are so natural to human existence that I think that we won't be able to find a single human on the planet who says, in my entire life, I've never had any blocks. And for me, I have personally had them all the time.
Please share us a few blocks that you had in your career.
In both ways. Like first, I feel I don't know whether to call it a block or what we could call it, but I call it a restlessness, which happens from within. So as a teenager, I suddenly found myself becoming very restless. And perhaps the reason for that was that I wanted to do something with my life. I didn't know what, but I sensed, from childhood, that transition to when you're becoming a youth. You are trying to understand life. And I was trying to understand that what can I do with my life? Or where is all of this going? I had sensed that I have left childhood behind. And I was not aware of what the adult world looked like. So this in between, this later teen years, there was a lot of confusion in my mind that what is going to happen now? And there was a deep restlessness in me of just like my family members would say. In fact, my sister still teases me that she says, only you have the ability to sit down alone in a room just looking into space. And she said she and her friends would come in and they would say, oh my God, your sister. Again, she's
Zoned
like
out.
that, in her own thing. So these were certain character traits that I couldn't understand about myself, that why this restlessness from within. Also, I found that because of this restlessness, I was not very agreeable or easygoing as a teenager, which I found our personalities, my sister was my complete opposite. Or even I felt my parents couldn't understand me because they were easygoing, enjoying life, and they couldn't understand why I was becoming so serious about life, so like confused about life. I remember that in my later teen years, my family used to love to go to Mahabaleshwar, a hill station near Pune. And just a holiday quite often. Like to me, it seemed all the time, but maybe it wasn't all the time. But I would say no always to go. And my parents would get really upset with me that why does she always say no? That no, I don't want to come. And frankly, I started to question myself that why do I say no? Why do I not like to just go out, laugh with friends, enjoy? Why do I not do that? What is wrong with me? I used to ask. And I got the answer to this actually much later in life. I realized that I'd already started singing at that time, learning how to sing. I was winning competitions, and then I started to sense that my family, our lifestyle, was not the lifestyle that one needed to inhabit if you wanted to really become a professional singer or take anything very seriously. For that, there is these beautiful words in the Indian language like sadhana, tapasya, ekagraha, like just focusing on one thing. But these were not things which were happening in my family. I didn't have any influences, any mentors who would make me really single focused on that point. And every time we went to Mahabaleshwar, I felt I would come back like a zoned out person, like as if I've lost my focus. It would take me almost 1 week to come back to that seriousness. Every time, I tried giggling with friends. My heart was not in it. I would feel that what are these people doing? Just wasting their lives, just laughing, giggling, no focus. And mainly, I would feel that in my life, I want that focus. I want to do something. So I feel that this was a very big struggle for me because if my home environment was a little different, and it would have really helped. Now, having said that, I feel that my home was one of the most most relaxed, most chilled place. So many people complain, our parents want us to get good marks in school. My parents had no such expectation. My marks were never good in school. I was just not interested in studies. My sister, on the other hand, she would be in the top 3. First, second or third, that's it. And without studying, because at our place, the atmosphere was so easygoing that nobody would study. In fact, my parents would take us to watch movies before an exam. And this might sound stupid and ridiculous, but that's my experience of life. So there was such a casual attitude. Now, there were some benefits in that because of that approach, my parents would always ask, are you happy? That was the only thing. If you're happy, it's all good. And that, I think, allowed me to just start doing things that I liked with no pressure. There was no expectation that, oh, are you getting marks? Will you go into this line? Will you become this? Will you become that? They didn't even want me to become anything. It was a very traditional standard thing that we have 2 daughters. Now let them just get some degree and then they'll get married. I mean, this was the expectation. And I used to get scared of that. I was like, I don't want to get married. I want to do something with my life. And so that was, I think, the one of the challenges for me, that how you have to develop first the ability or the perceptions in order to create anything. First, you have to distance yourself from the world, its pleasure-seeking quality. Because happiness and pleasure are two different things. Pleasure is what makes us happy in the moment. That, if you want to eat a chocolate cake, you want to anything that just pleasures somebody, sex, this, that, whatever just makes you happy just fleetingly in the moment. After that, you've even forgotten. There's nothing. But happiness is something I feel that is long lasting. That when you've acquired something, that if you feel, oh, now I think I can sing fairly well. I think now I can paint well. So now I'm able to express myself.
So okay, you are relating happiness to everything that a human being is. And since we are on the restlessness, youth, and the Gen Z era, and we are living through that now.
Yes.
Your youth or the teenage and today's teenage youth, where is the happiness quotient going to be in the creative field?
That is very hard to say because I feel life is so integrated that rather than separated, I think that talking about the Gen Z era or coming to our current times, I think that one of our biggest crisis situation is about how are human beings going to find meaning in life. Because today's youth has grown up on the phone. And that is the saddest thing. Because now their minds are unable to focus. Now they don't have, one of the biggest problems I've seen is that they are not able to handle rejection. They are just not able to handle rejection the right way. And why I say that from experience. My own daughter, she was in school and somebody said something mean to her. So I was upset. She called me from the school in her lunch break and she said that, Mom, this happened. Somebody said something very mean to me. So I felt bad for her and I said that, how you must be feeling bad. So she said, Mom, I felt bad. But then I quickly opened my phone and I scrolled and now I'm fine. So I said that, no, you should not have taken that phone because this was your chance to check yourself. That somebody said something. Now you have to check that what they said, was it right or was it wrong? Because that could have helped to make you better. That if what they said was wrong, no problem. Then you know that no, what they're saying is wrong. So don't pay any attention to that. Don't disturb yourself. You are right. But if for any reason, if you were wrong, then this could have been an opportunity to actually learn and become good. So that then, once you have, life is always showing us small opportunities when we fail at something or when some wrong thing might have happened through us. It's showing us that no, improve, make yourself better. But I've seen that in the youth today, because they have this device in which they can just switch their mind. And that's why I'm very worried that how will they handle the big rejections of life? These are still very small things, but life keeps on teaching us how to make ourselves strong. And if we keep ourselves so vulnerable and distracted and zoned out, how will we really create? So this is my worry with not just the cell phone, but with our sort of smart lives. We say our lives now are becoming so comfortable. So we have smart homes. In the US where I live, there are people, once you enter the door of your house, the doors open by themselves because they're sensors. You don't even have to take the effort of finding your key, turning the key in the lock and then coming in. Nothing. You just walk, it senses, the doors open. When you come in, the whole house, it's beautifully temperature controlled. If the weather is hot outside, inside will be cold. If it's cold outside, inside will be warm. When you go to cook something, you don't have to light a match and actually get the fire to cook. You just press a button and the natural, it's all electronic. So for everything in your home, and this is called a smart home, where you don't have to do anything. Then you have your smart cars, where now you don't even have to use your cognition to navigate the road. Who is coming? Can I concentrate? Do I have the ability to really concentrate? Because now you sit in the car will drive itself. So now you don't need to even think about that. Then let's come to our smartphones. That now everything can be done on the smartphone. Now they are saying, don't even write. Where do you need to write? Just type a few things. But even now, don't even type. Just talk. Just say it, whatever you want, and it'll come. You want to put an order? Don't type. Just say, can you send my order of this? You want to pay some bill? Can you just say, yeah, just do this. I'm accepting this. Just give me a thing. I'll just press a button. Payment is done. So far, and so much more. Our phones can do practically everything. They entertain us. They get all our work done. Of course, they help us with communicating. They're just an all-in-one kind of thing. So I feel that all this smartness is making the human so dumb. Because how can we develop ourselves if we are not thinking at all? So all this technology is taking away the most important human quality of creative thinking, creative cognition.
Like being human.
Yeah, this is...
What would you suggest a process for one person? Like your daughter, you expressed that she should have actually felt bad
Yeah.
and thought about it. Being
Also,
sad.
why I say that is it makes us learn to handle rejection.
Yes.
That everybody in the world doesn't have to like us. And nobody does. Nowadays people are committing suicide because somebody said something mean to them on Facebook, on Instagram. And, we have to learn to handle rejection. Everybody can't like us. It's not humanly possible. Even the Buddha, even where we talk of gods, people say, no, I don't like this one, I like that one, or this is my person, my favorite. So we shouldn't try. What we have to do is be true to ourselves. Understand, why have I been born? What is going to be the meaning of my life?
Again, the purpose that
The
we have.
purpose, yeah. Because when we become focused on that, then we are not disturbed by other people. That today there's somebody is your friend, they might betray you, they might change. So you should not allow yourself to get disturbed by that. And how can that happen? That happens when your life has some sort of goal, something which is really meaningful to you, that you say, never mind, I can focus on this and I can do this. Not zone out the way the phone makes you, that are tu nahi aur sahi, or nahi aur sahi. So nowadays, this work heartbreak, people don't feel sad. Like in my time, if people had a heartbreak, sometimes their entire life would go and they would not be able to recover. Today, before they have broken up, they've moved on and into a next breakup, then a next. So I'm saying that things have changed. Yeah. So, times have really changed. And so my whole thing is, how can we ensure and enable human well-being? Because we don't want a society like this. We want that there should be harmony, happiness, peace. And so imagine that today we have everything. Could an ancient human have even imagined that today's human, what do we not have? Our lives are actually so good. Then why are we so unhappy?
And especially when we are going into the world where robots are going to take over the humans, AI is going to take over the humans. So what is your take on the AI thing?
So AI is actually one of the things which has transformed our lives beyond really what we could have ever imagined. The something which doesn't even need us to think is pretty scary. That it has the capacity to do so much for us. But having said that, I feel it can't do exactly what we want for us, because it is not us. It gives us information from a pool of humanity, from whatever billion numbers are there on the planet today. It gives us a little bit of their thinking and their ways of understanding life. But from a creativity point of view, it doesn't have the ability to create anything which has not yet been said or expressed. And that is why we humans are so unique. So we can't think only up to AI. We have to keep our thinking capacity, our critical thinking capacity, because we need to think what next, what after AI. If we surrender to AI and say that, boss, you are the greatest. Now I don't have to think ever in my life again. Now you are going to guide me. Then we have lost our authenticity of who we are as humans. That what is the qualities that make me unique? So it's everything about me, not only the things I do, like drawing or painting, singing, not that, but even how do I think?
So the real intelligence, not the artificial.
No, yes, yes. How do I think about
Those are the
things?
real intelligence that we have
Correct.
to think about.
And also things that I like, that, what are the colors that I like? In the different seasons, how do I feel about things? What is the food I like? Which are the type of people that I feel most connected with? Just in terms of thinking that, what are the conversations I like to have? Which are the movies I like to watch? What are the books I like to read? All of this is what makes me unique, the way it makes every human unique. That all this combination of my lived experiences. So it could be my education, it could be the different places I've traveled, the different humans with whom I've interacted. All of this makes my personality what it is. So this is the authentic self which any of your AIs don't know. They can't know. Because actually even sometimes we don't know about ourselves. Suddenly some action happens from us and then we say, oh my God, how did this happen? That's because our subconscious was experiencing something and then it just came out. So when we even don't know ourselves, how can AI know us really? They try to put out, they're just also, it's all mechanical in a way. It is artificial completely. There's nothing real about it. So if we rely on that, we are actually, we are not being true to ourselves at all. And so that authenticity, quality will get completely lost.
Yeah, because now I hear a lot about the young generation having boyfriends, girlfriends relationship with an AI, with a chatbot.
That they're saying that's the next. The next level is in China. I've seen actual human, girlfriends being made, and that people now are saying, I want a girlfriend who doesn't fight with me, who doesn't argue with me, who will not hurt my feelings. I mean, this is not the way to live. Because humans are social animals. We need people. We need communities. So if we say that it's better to have a girlfriend who will never break up with me, who will never fight with me, who will never argue. So instead, I'll take a robot girlfriend who will always be very nice. But that will not, because we like that little bit of human madness, that little bit of erratic, that somebody is challenging us, saying, no, why this? We like that. As humans, we want somebody to say, no, why? You will also find that we almost always get married to people who are very different from us.
Okay, right.
We don't marry people who are just like us. I found that very interesting. So, when we talk that, who will you marry? We pick up a list of things that we like a lot. But if we actually see the people we get married to or have a relationship with are generally people who are opposite. I mean, at some fundamental level, there will be some commonalities. There's something, be it value systems or whatever, which are very similar. But otherwise, their perceptions, their way of looking at life, and we do it because opposites attract. Okay. That's the main thing. So if we are going to get a robot who totally agrees with us, can you imagine what that will do to us as humans?
That's self-gratification. That it will say yes to everything.
Everything. And after a point, I think people will just, get they won't be able to handle this if that's the way. So that's why, I feel AI is so new that we don't know what this journey is going to be like. Which way is it going to
And
take?
AI, I think so, is 100% dopamine. And we don't need 100% dopamine. We need serotonin. We need
And we
oxytocin.
need us to create it ourselves.
We need us.
We can't have it like that ready-made, because then we are losing all our creative capacities.
So, Chanda, now just take us through your journey of choice of career, your Bollywood, your agonies and ecstasies, and your experiences that
Okay,
brought you to this
right.
time.
So I've already shared that I started to learn classical music, and I started the journey for me in terms of with connecting with people started when I started singing out, it began with competitions. And then some places, you get to perform. And I remember in my final year of college, that year, I had won the maximum number of pure classical competitions. And I remember at Bal Gandharva in Pune, Nana Patekar ji was the chief guest, and he had given me the award for the person in these intercollegiate who had sung and won maximum number of competitions that year. And I still remember, his words when Abhinandan is what he had given me. And those things mattered a lot, because when you're starting, you have no real expectations of yourself. And you have no family background that wants you to be a singer or even thinks that you can be a singer. Like, I'd shared with you, my mother used to keep saying that till Lata Mangeshkar is alive, nobody else should sing. And, when we think in today's times, where parents pamper kids so much that you sing anything and they say that, oh, you're wonderful, or, they do so much to motivate kids. And but at my times, it was very different. And I think because neither of my parents were ever ambitious, or rather that they didn't really think in terms of having a profession. So that's why that really wasn't on the cards at all. But as I had mentioned, I had this strange restlessness within me throughout. And that came out in a rather unexpected way. After my final year exams, which were in Bombay in JJ School of, because we had to go to JJ School of Art to do them, I remember sitting at my aunt's place in Mumbai. And there was my closest friend was with me. We were both just chilling, and we were having tea. And she told me, she said that, why do you keep singing just classical music? I don't like that. And she said, I love these film songs, and I feel they'll suit your voice. Why don't you sing light music, or especially film music? So I said, oh, but I don't know anything about film music. So she said, oh, but you should try. And suddenly in my mind, connections started happening. That in the newspaper, I was keeping track that music directors Kalyanji Anandji at that time, in the early 90s, were giving opportunities to new singers. And so I thought that, okay, I know their name, but I don't have any contact, any number. How do I approach them? So a thought just struck me, and on the phone, I just dialed, there you used to have, I'm forgetting what you called, Ask Me or whatever it is, that you could just dial a number and ask for anybody's number. So I dialed that number and I asked the person that, can you give me the phone number of music directors Kalyanji Anandji? They said, हाँ जी, लिखिए. And I wrote down the number. And this happened in split seconds. And then I dialed the number. And I called the phone, and somebody actually picked up on the other side. And they said, हाँ जी, कौन बात कर रहा है? I said, मैं चंदना हूँ, I'm come from Pune, and I would like to speak to Kalyanji bhai. He said, okay, रुकिए. And then immediately it was, हाँ जी, कौन बात कर रहा है? And it was Kalyanji bhai himself. I was so shocked. I was like, then I explained to him. He said, where are you from? I said, I'm from Pune. At that time, I was a shagird of my second guru, Veena Sahasrabuddhe ji. So I told him. And then he said, where are you now? I said, I'm in Mumbai. He said, do you know anything of Mumbai? I said, no, not really. So he said, which area? I said, I'm in Dadar. He said, okay, come down, take a taxi, and tell the taxi, Pedder Road. and Prabhu Kunj, which is Lata Mangeshkar's house. He said, all of them know it. I was learning so much even in this. And then he said, I live diagonally opposite on Pedder Road in a building called Devashish. Just come there. So I said, okay. And me and my friend, she too couldn't believe what was happening in a matter of split seconds. We just put down our teacups and we said, let's get into a taxi. We got into a taxi and, you won't believe, in half an hour, I was sitting across Kalyanji Bhai, like we're sitting. This feels surreal to me today. People think so much. They plan, I will get this, I will get that. But I feel I've experienced, the blessings. Sometimes that how things happen with no effort. And this is what I call the creative flow. That how some things you just feel a deep thing from inside. And in a matter of seconds, it can just happen. The way all of this happened, I didn't ever think that I would have anything to do with film music. I was really enjoying classical music and I liked Bollywood music, but I didn't think that it would, have any place in my life. But once I sat opposite Kalyanji Bhai, this was again sheer luck that Anandji Bhai, his younger brother, they worked as a team, had gone on a world tour with all of their musicians, their whole team. And I believe it was at the Amitabh Bachchan show that they had gone out with all these big superstars. And so Kalyanji Bhai, due to ill health, had not been able to travel. So he was sitting alone and he had a little bit of free time. So this is also, I call, destiny in a way, that I got to meet him when he was very, very quiet, relaxed. And so that's where, he liked my voice. Then he said that this carried on for 3-4 days. He kept calling me every day. And then I said, I have to go back to Pune. And he said, Kyun, abhi Pune kyun jana hai? Why do you need to go there? Now, you should be in Mumbai. So I said, no, my parents, I live in Pune. So immediately he called up my father and he said that, I'm Kalyanji Bhai and we really like your daughter's voice and we would like to introduce her to playback singing. So can you come? I would like to invite you for lunch next week. And so he actually invited my parents and we all came together from Pune. And that's when he spoke seriously with my parents that your daughter has a cinematic voice and she has trained in classical. So we feel that we would like to introduce her. So can you send her to Bombay? And then, they organized the things that they had 2 other girls, that one is famous singer, Sadhna Sargam of today, and Sonali. So luckily I got to be with them, stay and learn, which was the main thing. What exactly is the world of playback singing? Because the principles are very different from classical music. Just fundamentally, you're working with the same things. You're working with sur, tal, words, but the approach is completely different. So there was actually a lot to learn in that journey. So that's kind of where this journey started for me of playback.
So you're saying that you should allow life and be open to life. And, there is also destiny.
Yeah, I feel that if we plan too much, sometimes we limit our potential. And if we are honest and true to ourselves, life itself starts to create those. We can't do it with our mind. We can't tell our mind, this has to happen for me. I will do this. It's not rigid like that. When we become like water, when we are ready to flow, that I don't know in which direction it will take me. Now, having said that, I did get into Bollywood, but it's not as if my problems were solved. In fact, new problems emerged. One is I found it very tough because I didn't have any background support, nothing at all. So how actually the journey began for me was because the famous company Tips Music, they were having a competition to introduce new singers. So, and this was at that time where this was not the done thing. This was very new. And I remember that my parents had given me 2 years that either really start doing something professionally in this field, or then we're going to get you married. So I was really worried. I'd come to that end of my 2-year limit, and it was time. In fact, I'd already said no to, I'd already, it was the last month, and I'd told my landlady that I'm moving back. And it was 2 or 3 days before this. It was a Friday, and Thursday. And on Friday, the competitions were to begin. And I was saying my byes to the people in the industry that I'm leaving now. And one of the composers told me, who I was saying bye to, he said that, oh, you must be going to that competition where all the new singers are going. I said, no, I'd lost interest by that end. I thought nothing is happening. I'm anyway moving back. So he said, no, Tips is having a big competition. So go to that competition. So I said, okay. I somehow found their address. I came to the office. When I came to the office, I asked the people that I'd like to participate. They said, no, are you joking? The competition is tomorrow morning and you've come here in the evening. It's impossible. They said, we closed our... I've literally done things I was begging and pleading. I mean, I still feel sorry for my young self who was literally saying, please, I have to sing. Please give me that thing. Then somehow they relented. They said, okay, we'll just put you on the list. But now all the good tracks on which people are going to sing, all are gone. We have only one track left. And that's of Mera Naam Chin Chin Choo. Now, I had barely even heard that song ever. I mean, I just knew sort of it, but I had never learnt it, practiced it. And I knew that song didn't offer that same potential like the other songs, in which you could really showcase. And above all, I didn't know it. But since I was in no place to make any demands, so I said, okay, that's fine. And then I still remember that my name was the only name written in pencil down. Everybody's names were nicely typed because it was all properly set. For me, after leaving their office at 5, this was not the era of YouTube where I could just go to my phone and just play Mera Naam Chin Chin Choo. I had to now go to a cassette shop. I had to really find that song. Then I had to get it. By the time I was back, it was 8:39. And I started trying to learn the song. And then next morning, I had to be there where they were testing this thing. And during the time my turn came and I sang the song, in between while singing, I forgot the lyrics.
Oh, God.
Because I just didn't remember. But what was very good is because I wasn't attached to results.
Okay.
I just did a lot of la 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 ha 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 instead of the words. And I was just singing and enjoying. I said, anyway, it's gone. Now I don't even remember the words. So now there's no hope. And a different kind of freedom came in me. And I just started to just do ha 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 la 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 and enjoy. And I somehow completed the song. After that, I said that, okay, now this has not gone well. So I came back to Pune, assuming that there's nothing going to happen here. And I reached on for the weekend. And on Monday morning, my roommates from Mumbai started to call me. And they were like, can you please call the tips office right away? Because they're reaching out to us, asking for your number, and they are trying to reach you. Because apparently I was the only one who didn't bother to check that have I passed or not passed. Because I thought after forgetting the lyrics, there's no hope for me. But I called the office from Pune, and suddenly the tone of voice changed. Like before, I was begging them, there were all the office people, and now suddenly they were like, hello ma'am, congratulations, you have won the competition. You're the only one selected. I was like, what? Really? How did that happen? And then she said that we have set up a meeting for you with Mr. Kumar Taurani, and he will decide how you would proceed. So I remember meeting Mr. Kumar Taurani, and then he said that he congratulated me, and he said that I had just this uncanny feeling that you would be able to sing. And so he said, I'm just going on my gut feel. And he said, what I appreciated was that you were the last person to sign up. He said, I could see that. And he said also that you had gotten the worst song. And he said that when you forgot I don't mean worst by in that sense. I just mean that it was not really a showcase type of song and you had no choice in that. And he said that you forgot the lyrics, but you didn't give up. You kept on doing la 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 ha, and you actually, whatever you sang was pleasant. So he said, something is making me feel that you would be the right choice for this. And he said, but still, I'm not going to make any commitment to you as per the competition because you have won. So we are going to give you one project and we will release that. If that album becomes a success, then we will sign you on. So that was, when that was the era of cover versions. And it was the perfect ground for people to learn, in a sense. So I got I was fortunate even here that Tips had spent a lot of money and done, mujra songs from films like Jhumka Gira Re or all those kind of filmy mujra songs.
Which was the song you got?
No, I got the entire album,
Yeah, but
which had so many songs.
Favorite one?
Kajra Mohabbat Wala, so many.
You sung that?
Uh-huh.
You've sung that?
No, sung that means in this album. Otherwise, all of these were sung by Lata ji.
Your song which you sang.
Okay, I'll complete the story.
Okay.
Because there were so many in this that lots of, and then this album went on to become 3 or 4 volumes. So we just kept singing all of this. Or, Sharafat Chhod Di Maine, or from Muqaddar Ka Sikandar, which was that Salame Ishq Meri Jaan, all the Mujra songs in films. So,
so they were not originals. They were
cover versions. Because, suddenly in a competition, you can't get, and not at that time. Today, the world has changed really so much that we live in a very different world. But so I remember that these tracks were great. And I was fortunate that, they were even more modernly recorded than the originals. Because by that time, we were in the digital age. And so they were very crisp. And I recorded the entire album and they released it. And that album became a very big hit. It became one of Tips's highest selling things. And it was a matter of good things coming together. That for me, it was a wonderful opportunity platform. The tracks were very good. The concept, in fact, almost every rickshaw was playing that song at that time. Today rickshaws have become quiet. At that time, rickshaws were so loud with music. So that's when, after that, Mr. Kumar Taurani called me and he said that this album has become has become a big hit. So now we would like to sign a 3-year contract with you. And so that's how the journey began. And that's how I also got my first playback song, because they were producing otherwise I was in a contract then. I probably would not have been able to sing out. But they were producing their first film, and the main singer who they had selected was not able to sing that day. So I got a chance to just go and do a dubbing. But because the music directors Anand Milind of Husn-e Suhana liked that rendition, then they convinced Mr. Ramesh Taurani Kumarji that, let this stay in her voice. And that's how my playback singing career began. But also, I started to realize some of the problems. One was that my parents, if you are a young girl in the Bollywood film industry, you need some anchoring. And unfortunately, I didn't have mentors. I didn't have anybody who understood the film business. My mother was more shy than me. So she was not like the other filmy moms who were, actually able to contribute and to sit and plan what should be the next moves. So for me, I really felt that isolation, that I knew the industry is not safe for a young girl. So I had to be very careful from when I was so young myself. So that prevented a lot of my growth, which ideally should have happened. Bollywood is a challenging place for any young girl. And normally you have to build up secure systems. But that is the one thing we understand. What we don't understand is people need support systems of mentors, of people, especially when you have no idea of that background. Like today, if my kids want to get into that, they would know so much what took me a lifetime to know. For them, they already know it because,
studies there.
yeah, because, they know everything. So the journey is so much easier for them. For me, I had no idea. I didn't know what a studio was. I didn't know all the people, how were they working? What were they thinking? How does this whole thing work? So if there was an adult presence in my life who really understood things, it would have really helped. So I sensed that this was one real thing which helped me back. Another thing was I stopped being myself. I was told not to sing classical music. I was told not to draw and paint. Because they said that people need to know who are you. You have to create an image. It's so ironic, that today those same things we value a lot. We say, oh, if a person can sing classical and light music, that's great. Oh, and they can paint and draw, that's wonderful. Today we appreciate that. But at that time, everybody was chasing the idea, can you become a master at one? That this is me, ye meri pehchan hai, this is who I am. So that was one of the issues. And I started to feel suffocated. I felt that, this is not moving forward the way it should. And I was being held back majorly with these issues. And so something within me started to want that freedom, that escape, that my life can't be only about this. There is more to it. There's something that I don't understand. And that's when I met my husband and took a very important decision of leaving the country, leaving Bollywood and moving to the United States. And that was not a calculated decision because, once you get to 30, that's the time that a singer really starts to become good. So, then that journey actually begins. Now, actors, or rather I should say actresses, have it the opposite way, although again there today, times have changed. But at that time, if an actress reached 30, it was time to pack up and leave the industry for young girls in their teens to come in. So
at 30, your voice would be maturing to do more kind of
becoming better.
Yeah,
it's becoming more, because in singing, the more maturity you have, I feel it's the same for acting or for anything, but definitely for music. For music, in fact, with age, you really start to get the nuances that you're not even aware of when you're young. So for actors, I can still understand, but for singers, so that was a very big decision to just leave.
So you were at your peak when you left.
Yeah, completely.
Almost that.
Yeah, because, I left at the time where the entire future was still there. There was like so much more, many more decades of actual singing. But I think something within me was wanting something else, was feeling that for my journey, something else should happen. So once I got married, went to the US, then a new journey began, a journey of reinvention of who am I and what can I do.